All right, let's we're going to do some sketching practice this week, and in your in your textbook, the section here, read through this about techniques to use on sketching. Some people find it easier to sketch across the page this way. Some people find it easier to sketch toward themselves to get straight lines. And some people find it better to go at an angle. You need to practice a little bit to see what feels best for you. Because what we're looking for is the ability to freehand draw straight lines and other shapes also. So read through the section in here, and you're going to get some practice sheets this week for you to practice doing some different things. And there's some techniques in here on, like how to find the midpoint of a line. The important thing about sketching is that things stay in perspective. And you got this little section right here about maintaining proportions. And so that's the important part about sketching. And you say, well, why do I have to be able to sketch? Because I'm learning to do AutoCAD. You may in your job find the need to be able to go out into the field or into the factory, or even in the conference room or somewhere, and have to do sketches. Either you're looking at a building that's got to have some repairs or remodels or additions done to it, and you need to sketch the floor plan or the wall or the building, or maybe it's a part of a piece of machinery that you need to sketch and measure, because you're not always going to be able to take your computer with you. Yes, we've got our phones, yes, we've got tablets, but sometimes it's just not practical. So being able to sketch, and even in the office, architects and engineers both, they will sketch on paper to kind of work out ideas. It just comes quicker to them that way. So being able to maintain proportion is important. Okay, so let's look at some of these techniques. The worksheets I'm giving you, the first one here, and these are practice for you. You've got different things here: sketch horizontal lines, vertical lines, lines to the right, lines to the left, and there's little index marks up and down the sides of the sheet there. And so the thing is for you to practice, and I find it easier when drawing straight lines to take short dashes instead of trying to draw the whole thing in one swoop. You may find it easier going horizontally like that. You may find it easier to go vertically. So just turn your paper to whatever angle you need it to be at, okay? Okay. So you're gonna work through those sheets, practice that stuff. Now this one is telling you 75-degree angles, different angles. Well, if you remember your angles, this is a 90-degree angle right here, the L of my hand. So 45-degree angle is going to be half of that. So just kind of look at that and say, okay, that's going to be 45 degrees, and then practice some 45-degree angles. Well, if you think about, okay, so 45, half of 45 is 22 and a half. So really, a 20-degree angle is kind of half of this. So if I were to come up here and say, okay, that's 45, half of that would be about 20, it'd be about right there. Okay, the 60, and I'm going to come back to this one, the 60, if you think about your 90-degree angle here and you divide it into 3 parts, and you've got 30, 60, 90. So if I think of it in terms of, okay, so there's 45. And if I'm looking at it and I'm just kind of visualizing, okay, so there's about 60. Okay, now if I think about a 75, if I take my 45 and I say, okay, so there's 60, that's a little much. That's about 60. 75 is halfway between 60 and 90. So practice some of those, and then if I were to grab my my protractor, I just want to check myself and see how I did. Okay, so I like 72 degrees there, 70 degrees. So I was pretty close there. That was at 70. Was it 24? 24, 25 degrees there, so I was pretty close on that. Okay, so I was estimating these, so here I'm somewhere between 55 and 60 on this. And this one was going to be 45. So I was at 41. So it was pretty close on those. So give those a try. Now the circles, if you want to measure out the distances for sketching the circles, go ahead and measure those out. So it says a 2.5 inch circle. Well, that's going to be a 1 1/4 both ways. Okay, and so the center line method is where you draw center lines between there. And I would mark my 1 1/4 both ways, all the way around. And then you kind of sketch an arc to close those, and I find it easier to kind of sketch arcs in a clockwise manner at the top of the circle, if you will. If you're left-handed, I don't know what to tell you. You're just gonna have to try and see what works for you. Okay. Okay, and then using the square method, these are indicated in the book there also. You draw diagonal lines across the square, which it's very similar to that center line method. And then you figure out that distance, and you can measure it with your ruler. You can use your pencil, so I can look at that and say, okay, so that's my distance. And I can put me a little mark. Or you could use another pencil, or you could use a, you know, like the paper method there. We don't have to use it as a Trammel or a compass. We can just use it to measure with. So I'll put me an index mark there. And then I've got my marks. And so it takes a little work. And so you got a 2-inch circle there. Free circle is kind of, you're just, imagine, you know, you're drawing the sides of a pie, if you will. Okay. This one you're sketching arcs, so you can measure those out and sketch those in. So you're just doing a quarter of it. One that you don't see very often, and I haven't seen it here in this book here. I'm gonna try it that way. Is using 2 pencils as a compass, and you kind of hold your pencils kind of like chopsticks, if you will. Not exactly like chopsticks, but kind of. And you measure out your marks on your paper, and then you hold them and you spin your paper. Okay, so on drawing an ellipse, you've got the long edge, the long side is the major axis, so your diameter would be longer. The shorter one is the minor axis. And it should be tangent at each side or each end of it. So if to draw them, you sketch out a rectangle with center lines, and then you're kind of not really sketching a circle, but a series of arcs that are tangent at both ends and across the top. Okay. Freehanding is a little more different. You do that. The book indicates this Trammell method. And so what it is, I took me a piece of a note card here, and you mark out half the diameter of the major axis and half the diameter of the minor axis. And then what you're doing is you're putting the B, the minor axis index mark on the horizontal line, and the C, the major axis index mark on the vertical line. And then it'd be easier if you just make you a series of points instead of trying to actually draw it. And so you're making you a series of arcs, or marks, to help create your ellipse. And then to do the other way, you just got to remember, just like it shows there in the book, keep the B on the horizontal line, the C on the vertical line. So coming up here, we would drop it down into this quadrant. And make our marks as we're moving through there. Okay, and then the last part there, you're sketching irregular curve through the points, and you can see the points there. So I find it better in a case like this, to where don't watch your pencil lead so much, but watch where you want your pencil lead to go. So look ahead to the point that you're going to next. All right, so give all of these little exercises a try. This week you're going to be sketching the alphabet of lines, and you can use a straight edge to do that one with. But we're going to do some sketches over the next few weeks, some with a straight edge, some without a straight edge. So they'll be freehand. So give it a little try and get a little practice on both of those.